Welcome into the Fantasy Football Diagnostics Podcast, where we provide you with your weekly diagnosis of everything fantasy football. Whether it's season-long leagues, dynasty, DFS, or sometimes even IDP, we got you covered all year long. Let's do it. Let's get to it. Welcome into the Fantasy Football Diagnostics Podcast. It is Monday, December 4th, 2023. I'm your host, Jon Jeune. And it is a solo pod tonight. Greg has some things to take care of. And obviously, we are live today. We had some difficulties getting live last Thursday, so apologies for that. To those that couldn't catch us live, we still were able to get everything out to the feed. But again, we just had some issues getting live. So, desperate times call for desperate measures. We had to go the pre-recorded route. I am live today, a little bit later than usual, going live at 4 p.m. So apologies to that we couldn't be at our normal 3 p.m. start time. But without a doubt, we are here. I am here, ready to recap everything, almost everything that went down in Week 13. There was a lot of highly anticipated games. Some of those didn't go the way we might have thought. But, I guess that's what we get, right? Thursday Night Football was actually a game, and an entertaining game at that. So we had to suffer through some not so entertaining games on Sunday. But it is what it is. It is. We're at the crunch time, man. People are trying to get into the fantasy playoffs. Wins, losses, they have a lot of impact. They have a lot of implications at this point in time. Everybody's got probably one or maybe two more weeks to, lock down a playoff position. If you have already locked one down, kudos to you. Now you're just trying to make sure you have defenses, potential tight end streams if you're streaming tight ends. But, you're just trying to make sure that your roster is in a good position come the fantasy playoffs. Maybe you're streaming quarterbacks. You have a couple quarterbacks on your roster right now. Right now is the time where I think it's okay to have 2-3 quarterbacks on your team. It's okay to have 2 to 3 defenses on your team. Typically I subscribe to the notion that you want to get the backup running back from other teams, to be able to leverage, if there's an injury, you can now the backup becomes a starter, and now you've added another player to your starting lineup potentially, or you added a depth piece. But now I'm in the zone where I want my backup running backs. Like if I have a Christian McCaffrey, I want Elijah Mitchell. If I have Travis Etienne, I want Dearness Johnson, so on and so forth, because you don't want that to be the reason why your team does not advance further into the fantasy playoffs. And it's that time, right? We got to get a little bit more strategic with these things. We have to get a little cutthroat with these things in terms of, there's some of the decisions that we have to make, right? That wide receiver 3 that you were hoping would break out, probably a little too late for that, right? So, I think we've got to be at a point in time where we've got to basically plant our flags on certain things. We still have some room for flexibility and for change, but I think it's time to start planting our flags on certain things and getting ready for these fantasy playoffs. And if you have not clinched, right, if you need to win and get in, well, I've got news for you. Your playoffs have already started. So every week's got to be a playoff game from here on out. I've got a few teams myself that are in a situation like that. So, it is what it is. We have to adjust. We have to do what we have to do. But we have to treat it as if we are already in the fantasy playoffs. That being said, let's break down the week that was. And as always, I am going to implore you, if you are watching live, really appreciate that. Make sure you go ahead, comment, like, subscribe, all of that fun stuff. If you are watching live, make sure you jump in the chat as well. If you have some start-sit questions going into the week, some lineup questions, things like that, waiver questions, be more than happy to answer those. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, make sure you go ahead and you hit that notification bell, or you go ahead and you follow, you subscribe to the podcast. and leave a 5-star review if you can, right? Definitely goes a long way to help the show out. Doesn't cost you anything. And if you appreciate what we've been doing all year, then definitely show some love. So without further ado, let's jump into the quarterback swag. As the number one quarterback on the week. Can't imagine a person that saw this one coming, but Geno Smith, 23 of 41, 334 pass attempts, 3 passing touchdowns, 1 interception, also added 6 rushing yards on 2 attempts with a rushing touchdown. I mean, we talked about Geno Smith as being I don't want to play, I was okay playing a DK Metcalf or okay playing a Tyler Lockett, as a wide receiver 3 potentially. But Geno Smith came in here as the number one quarterback on the week after a week where we were really not trying to play him. If we could avoid it, and if you did, then kudos to you. Basically 30 fantasy points in this game, 29.96. Fantastic outing from him. I mean, the completion rate wasn't great, 56%, but the big passing total, yardage wise, the big touchdowns, 3 touchdowns, all to DK Metcalf, who we'll talk about a little bit later, but 4 touchdowns in total, adding the rushing touchdown. Just definitely a fantastic outing from Geno Smith, one who probably was on most people's benches. So if you started him, kudos to you. If you went against him, sorry to hear that. But these things happen in fantasy football. Moving on to the QB2 on the week, that would be, he's not here, but he's going to get the button, man. He's going to get the button. As Brock Purdy, Greg's start of the week at the quarterback position, 19 of 27, 314 passing yards, 4 passing touchdowns, 9 rushing yards. An absolute masterclass from Brock Purdy, 29.46 fantasy points. I mean, we know Philadelphia's defense is bad. This game was expected to be competitive. It really wasn't. San Francisco put a hurting on the Philadelphia Eagles, 42-19. So just a fantastic showing here from Brock Purdy, who just, this game was a little odd in that the fact that early on it looked like San Francisco was going to struggle. I think they had, 3 and out on their first drive, and they didn't get much going after that. But then soon after that, they went on these long drives. I'm talking about like 70-yard, 80-yard drives, and they did like 4 straight of them. So it was just a fantastic day from Brock Purdy, who just showed what some of us have known, which is he's one of the better quarterbacks in the league. People want to call him a system quarterback. I've never seen somebody in this 49ers offense do this so consistently, right? Like, we've seen a game like this from Jimmy G, but the fact that I almost said Tom Brady, the fact that Brock Purdy is doing this the way he's been doing it. I mean, I think I saw a stat today that he's got 4 straight 140 plus passer rating games. The first quarterback to do that since 2011. Aaron Rodgers won an MVP, and 2007, Tom Brady won an MVP. And then sure enough, today, Brock Purdy's MVP odds jump up, take a big jump there. So love the way Brock Purdy's playing right now. I've loved the way he's been playing all year. Kind of talked about it early in the season. I think he was my start of the week just 2 weeks ago. So talked about the stretch that he would have, and he's probably going to lead some people to some fantasy championships. So got to love that. And the QB3 on the week, not surprised, Dak Prescott, 29-41, 299 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns. Also added 23 rushing yards on 7 attempts, 28.26 fantasy points. I mean, this is a fantastic outing from Dak Prescott, which we've come to just expect this from him in recent weeks. He's finished as a top 3 quarterback basically every week for the past 5 or 6 weeks. So I am obviously, you're not going to go away from a Dak Prescott who's going to just continue to look, this offense, they want to throw the football now. I mean, Mike McCarthy fired Kellen Moore so that they could run the ball, and now he's resorted to throwing the ball all over the yard, man. So we love that for fantasy. Part of the reason why we had Dak Prescott, Greg and I both had Dak Prescott as a bust coming into the year, mainly because of the lack of passing volume that we thought there would be. And look at that. Just another game here where the passing volume is high, and Dak Prescott's continuing to get it done. So gotta love that. Rounding out these quarterback swags, though, the quarterback 4 on the week, Jalen Hurts. 5 would be Jordan Love. 6, Matthew Stafford. 7, Tua Tagovailoa. 8, Sam Howell. 9, Gardner Minshew. 10, Jared Goff. 11, Joe Flacco. And the quarterback 12, C.J. Stroud. Anything that sticks out to me here, Jordan Love with another really good performance here on Sunday Night Football. I mean, he seemed like he was playing with confidence. Some of his throws probably a little bit reckless, but I think, that he's got that kind of gunslinger mentality. I think it's also great that he was able to complete almost 70% of his passes, 69.4% of his passes, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, 10 rushing yards on 2 attempts. So he used his legs a little bit. But he's been really good as of late, and, started out the year hot, had a little bit of a lull in the middle of the year when, a lot of the weapons in that offense were missing. And now he's back to a place where I think we can go ahead and continue to play him going forward in these spots. So who else? Sam Howell getting it done. 127 passing yards, no passing touchdowns, 1 interception, and you'd ask like, how's it possible that Sam Howell finished as a quarterback 1? Well, 2 rushing touchdowns will help you do that. Gardner Minshew, who was a probable streaming candidate coming into the week against this Tennessee defense, had himself a day. That game went to overtime, just a wild game there, but continuing to get it done. And then I want to shout out Joe Flacco, man. Not particularly off the street. 2 games, had been with the team for a couple weeks now, but for him to make this start, finish in the top 12 for teams that, I mean, I was one of them. I had 2 quarterbacks on bye in Superflex, and I was like, I need to go to Joe Flacco. And I'm glad I did finish as a top 12 quarterback. But it wasn't all good at the quarterback position. And as it's been in recent weeks, like quarterback play has been so bad in fantasy. I don't know if it's been the bye weeks. I mean, even last week we had no teams on bye. It was still pretty bad. So, just looking at, Patrick Mahomes, just another bad outing from him. I mean, we talked about in the lead up to this game here, how bad he's been so bad. I mean, maybe I was a little hyperbolic with that, but he's been underwhelming to say the least. He's widely been drafted as a top 3 quarterback, and he's, going into this week was the quarterback 8, probably, finish outside the top 24 this week. So not a particularly great week, and probably didn't help you win your matchups. Probably lost your matchups there if you went with Mahomes this week. So just one thing to note, I mean, I think especially as we get to the playoffs, like I don't want to play guys because of their names. I don't want to play guys because, they helped me get there. I'm trying to play the best players right now. And Patrick Mahomes from a fantasy perspective has not been that. So keep that in mind. Justin Herbert also, I mean, that game was ugly. 6-0 game. Finishes the quarterback 21 here. Didn't have a touchdown pass. I mean, there was no touchdown scored in this game. It was field goals. But didn't have a passing touchdown, didn't have a rushing touchdown, had -5 rushing yards. It was just an overall bad game here for Justin Herbert here. So, and the entire Chargers offense really. So not a great game. Kyler Murray also got to throw him in here. Thought that he could get it done with his legs. only had 20 rushing yards, only had 145 passing yards, but his team was able to win by at least 2 scores here. I mean, it really was like 3 scores. I mean, Pittsburgh scored that touchdown in garbage time. And then Baker Mayfield, this game was competitive, went back and forth, but, subpar performance from him, completing less than 50% of his passes, throwing a deep touchdown, a long catch and run touchdown to Mike Evans there. So that rounds out the quarterback position. Moving on to running backs, and the first running back swag on the week is Alvin Kamara. I mean, we thought that he would have a big day, and that was mainly due to the potential lack of passing options. The Saints did end up getting Chris Olave for this game here on Sunday, so not quite the workload that we expected, but Kamara still got it done. 14 rush attempts, 51 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, added 6 receptions on 8 targets for 58 receiving yards, 28.9 PPR points on the day. Again, this is what you were expecting when you drafted Kamara late. I mean, obviously he was going to miss time with the suspension, but if you were able to hold the fort around him, basically Kamara was going to help you get to this place right here. So gotta love this spot here from or this outing here from Alvin Kamara. So hopefully we keep this up. Moving on to the number 2 running back on the week, Devon Achane, 17 carries, 73 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. Also added 3 receptions on 4 targets, or 30 receiving yards, rather, 25.3 PPR points on the day. This was a game where Achane outrushed Raheem Mostert 17-11, out-targeted Raheem Mostert 4-1. Now, I'll be completely honest, I didn't watch all of this game, saw bits and pieces as, I was at a wedding yesterday, so I didn't watch all of this game here, but curious to understand, was this purely, hey, we're up ahead and HN, we're going to get you back in. You've had some time off. We're going to ride through you and rest the veteran Raheem Mostert, or did a lot of these carries, these rush attempts, these opportunities, did these come early? So something I'll have to look into later in the week, but definitely love this performance from HN. If you were able to roster him, or, if you were able to play him coming off the knee injury, you got to be ecstatic about the output here from HN. Moving on to the RB3 on the week, and I know he's not here, but I'm going to hit the button, man. Got to. That was Greg's running back start of the week, Derrick Henry, 21 carries, 102 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, one reception on 2 targets, and 18 receiving yards, 25 PPR points on the day. Just a fantastic outing by the King. Derrick Henry was just able to, really have his way here with this Indianapolis rush defense. And it's fun. It's just interesting because he had to leave the game early. Was getting checked for a concussion. Ultimately was ruled not to have a concussion, but did not return to the game. At least I don't think so. So just a fantastic performance from Derrick Henry, which looks like it could have even been a bigger day for the King here. But that is where we are with the top 3 running backs. And so we round out these running back swags. Running back 4 on the week, James Conner. 5, Chuba Hubbard. 6, Christian McCaffrey. 7, Isaiah Pacheco. 8, Kyron Williams. 9, Rachaad White. 10, Tony Pollard. My running back start of the week. 11, Zach Charbonnet. And the running back 12, Jerome Ford. So rounding out, as we look at this top 12, James Conner in the revenge game. I mean, you got to love the revenge game narrative really coming through there. I wasn't even really big fan of playing James Conner in this game. He had not been overly productive, but 25 rush attempts, that's a huge number, and you love to see that just in time for a bye week this week. So won't be able to have him this week, but in going into week 14. But you'd love to see that coming out of going into the bye, and then obviously you have him coming out of the bye week and going into the fantasy playoffs. So that's definitely good news there. Chuba Hubbard continuing to be the lead back in Carolina over Miles Sanders, so you love that. Isaiah Pacheco, absolutely love what he was able to do on the ground. Kyron Williams, continuing to get that usage that we like, the touchdown usage as well. Rachaad White having himself a day. So just all in all, man, a lot of good performances at the running back position. I mean, we had another week with a lot of 2 touchdown performances. So you'd love to see that there. Ezekiel Elliott came through as a fill-in there for Mondre Stevenson. Damian Pierce seems to have gotten his job back from Devin Singletary. A.J. Dillon, I think he looked good in the opportunities he was given yesterday. Tajay Spears, I think, was filling in obviously for an injured Derrick Henry. Showed that he could carry a workload, 16 carries for 75 yards, 4.7 per attempt. So, love to see that. Derrick Henry will be back. So, but it just reinforces the fact that if you roster Derrick Henry, you should probably roster Tajay Spears for that reason. But that's pretty much it as positive as the positives go. If we look at the running back Jags on the week, Austin Eckler, man, I hit the panic button on him. I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago. I mean, it was bad. This week was bad. It just overall not good performance here from Austin Eckler. I mean, if I look at the box score, 14 carries, 18 rushing yards, 3 targets, 2 receptions, and 9 receiving yards. Just it has not been good from Austin Eckler. I mean, 18 rushing yards last week, 32 the week before, 64 and 67 the weeks prior. But these last couple weeks, man, really have not been good. Gets a matchup against Denver, who that is a good matchup, right? I mean, on paper, it definitely looks much better than it is. We saw, Damian Pierce was able to get done last week. But this Denver defense is much better than the one that it was, back when Miami ran for all those yards and all those touchdowns against them. So, it's too late to trade him. But I think at this point, you've really got to treat Austin Eckler as an RB2 going forward. And if you have better options, you got to look to them. You can't just start him based on the name anymore. Zach Moss, underwhelming, 19 carries, 51 rushing yards. I mean, that was not the performance that we were expecting from Zach Moss, who had been really good, in times earlier in the year, filling in for Jonathan Taylor, even when Jonathan Taylor returned, had even some big weeks there. So I'm willing to write this off as a one-off here for Zach Moss. Back to it next week. Najee Harris, disappointing game from him, as well as Jaylen Warren. Just Pittsburgh offense as a whole. Jahmyr Gibbs, not the game that we would have liked. Devin Singletary, obviously, this one's for obvious reasons. Damian Pierce was the guy, was able to get his job back. Essentially, he did get the goal line work there too, scoring a rushing touchdown. It just seems as if Damian Pierce just, took his job back essentially. And obviously, you didn't know that going into this matchup. And then DeAndre Swift, couldn't get much going against that Niners defense yesterday. That was, that game was interesting just purely from the smoke part of the game. There was a lot of people wanted the smoke in that game, and a lot of people were willing to give it out. So let's move on to wide receivers, man, and moving on to the wide receiver swags, the number 1 wide receiver on the week, DK Metcalf, and he led off the week strong, man. Thursday Night Football came right out the gate. 6 receptions on 8 targets, 134 receiving yards, 3 touchdown receptions, 37.4 PPR points on the day. This was a fantastic performance from DK Metcalf. You just from the onset, man, the 73-yard touchdown, caught a ball, tight window throw from Geno Smith, and he caught it. Deron Bland tried to jump it, and he just took off running, man. And I don't know if anybody's going to catch DK Metcalf when he's running full speed like that. So love this performance from DK Metcalf. I mean, this, I think, is what we have come to really expect these type of performances from him. These big games. I mean, we were talking about it on the air on Wednesday, lead up to the Thursday night game. But DK Metcalf has been he's been seeing the deeper A dot, deeper average depth of target, longer yards per reception. So when you look at it that way, you kind of expect DK Metcalf to have these big blow up games where he's receiving for over 100 yards, maybe catches a long touchdown or something like that. But we hadn't really seen that up until this point. And even the touchdowns weren't even these like long bomb touchdowns, right? The 73-yarder, that was mostly, those yards mostly came after the catch. The other 2 touchdowns were in the red zone. So you just love, hopefully this usage continues for DK Metcalf, but you love this because this is what we kind of expect from him. Moving on to the wide receiver 2 on the week, and I've got egg on my face for this one. Deebo Samuel, 4 targets, 4 receptions, 116 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns through the air, also added 22 rushing yards and a touchdown on the ground on 3 attempts, 35.8 PPR points on the day. And I say I got egg on my face for this one because I came into the week thinking, hey, you know what? He might be a wide receiver 3. Don't know if he's going to get the usage that we saw the week before. Brandon Ayuk's the true receiver. This is a wide receiver matchup. So I was all in on Ayuk, not so much in on Deebo Samuel. And he came out, had a great game, and you love to see that. Big fan of Deebo Samuel, big fan of his game. I think recently I've come to the conclusion that he's a better real-life player than he is a fantasy player, just because of the inconsistent usage, the spike weeks that come with him. But when they hit, man, boy, do they hit. And it definitely hit this week against Philadelphia. So you love this outing from Deebo. Moving on to the wide receiver 3 on the week, Nico Collins, 12 targets, 9 receptions, 191 receiving yards, 1 touchdown through the air, 34.1 PPR points on the day. And this is a game I did not see much of, if at all. Probably saw like one to three highlights from this game. But Tank Dell, RIP, went down very early in this game. And so Nico Collins just continued to be the main guy there for CJ Stroud. Again, I'm not sure, did Patrick Surtain follow him? Did they move Nico Collins around to get him away from Surtain? But just the fact that he was able to have such a big day, almost 200 receiving yards, just tells you the kind of impact he has and what's going to happen going forward, especially with the injury to Tank Dell. Speaking of the injury to Tank Dell, man, George Player 1 comes in. Hey, man, lost Tank Dell. Yeah, me too, buddy. My other wide receivers are Kupp, Waddle, Olave, Deontay Johnson, and JSN. Who should I pick up to replace Dell? Michael Wilson, OBJ, Jalen Hyatt, or Palmer? I'm assuming that Palmer is Trey Palmer. Between these options, well, Michael Wilson's on bye next week, so you can't play him. I think it would come down to OBJ or Jalen Hyatt. In that scenario, man, it's tough because Jalen Hyatt, I want to gravitate towards him because he's the receiver, unknown. Last time he played had, 100 yards receiving on five. He's saying Joshua Palmer from the Chargers. Okay, that's a little bit different. Josh Palmer, I mean, this offense is kind of broken, but it's broken because they lack another receiving option. Josh Palmer could come in, be a target right away. I think he's the happy medium between OBJ and Jalen Hyatt, if I'm being honest. Jalen Hyatt is the explosive guy, the unknown, third-round pick, rookie, so he could have an impact down the stretch. That's something that you would like to see. OBJ, though, is in a situation where he's the veteran. They're missing Mark Andrews. He could, lead to more. He could get more targets, more opportunities. Only problem with OBJ is he's been banged up and has continued to be banged up, and it's like different things, whether it's a shoulder or a knee or this or that or foot. So that part kind of scares me. But Joshua Palmer coming off the knee injury, if he's healthy, I think that he's ready to go. Thing is that this offense is missing like a ton. Like they're, obviously they don't have Mike Williams, they don't have Joshua Palmer. Quentin Johnston hasn't done anything that makes you think, well, like, oh, well, when Josh Palmer gets back, he might not have a job. Like, no, Josh Palmer will come back and be instantaneously thrusted back into this offense. So I believe that I would probably go Josh Palmer in that instance. He's asking, should I pick up Tyjae Spears? Now, Tyjae Spears is interesting. He's obviously, we talked about him a little bit. I think that that one's a little bit tougher, right? Because you're looking for you're kind of banking on that injury to Derrick Henry, or Derrick Henry missing some kind of time in order to really extract value from Tyjae Spears. So with your wide receiver room being Kupp, Waddle, Olave, Deontay, and JSN, I think you're okay enough at that position there to go ahead and get a Tyjae Spears. My only concern is you might not get anything from Tyjae Spears right away. And I feel like we've seen these receivers between Kupp, between Waddle, between Olave, between Deontay, between JSN, they've all been really inconsistent. And so I think you need somebody in your lineup to help bring this consistent, to help bring some consistency, bring a solid floor to your fantasy team. And I think Josh Palmer definitely brings that. So short answer is I'm probably leaning Josh Palmer. Rounding out the wide receiver swags, the wide receiver 4 on the week, CeeDee Lamb, 5, Tyreek Hill, 6, Mike Evans, 7, Christian Watson, 8, Michael Pittman Jr., 9, Devontae Smith, 10, Puka Nacua, 11, A.J. Brown, and the wide receiver 12, Alec Pierce. Egg on my face again, Puka Nacua. Talked about him potentially being downgraded in this matchup against Cleveland because Cleveland runs a ton of man coverage. Puka Nacua struggles against man coverage. And Denzel Ward ends up missing the game. Don't know how much that truly impacted Puka Nacua, his ability to have this outing here. But he started off the gate hot, 70-yard touchdown reception right out the gate. Had 34 yards rushing as well. Could have even had a bigger day. Had a 40-yard rush, basically called back for a hold. So Puka Nacua, hashtag good at football. Other guys that did well, Michael Pittman Jr., I mean, he's been really good, especially recent weeks. Love that. Mike Evans, what he's going to do. Christian Watson with his best game of the year, 9 targets, 7 receptions, 71 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns. Just if you ask my co-host Greg, probably a little bit too late there, as Greg's team has been eliminated from the playoffs. And most of these points were on my bench in one of my leagues, so did not help me. But if you started Christian Watson, I'm happy for you, most definitely. Tyreek Hill pretty much had the day we thought he would, and he had it pretty much by the first quarter. So, yeah, really, really must be really awesome to be that fast and that good at football. Some honorable mentions here. Chris Olave, he suited up after a week of, us thinking he wouldn't because of the concussion. But he ends up doing well here. DeAndre Hopkins had himself a good fantasy day as well. Finishing as a wide receiver 13, caught a touchdown. Brandon Cooks had a nice game. Cortland Sutton, my wide receiver start of the week. I don't even know if I really want to mention that one. Too late, already did. Jonathan Mingo had himself a day. Shout out to Greg for bringing him up as a guy that he was really into this week. JSN had a really good day. Could have even been a bigger day. So this one is one that I like looking towards through, the rest of the fantasy playoffs, as him being a guy that might be able to help you out. Just trying to see where he's rostered in leagues too, to see if he's a guy who's available. 57% of leagues, so yeah, he's definitely available in 43% of leagues. So might want to be a guy you look at. And then Elijah Moore had a okay day fantasy wise. I think it was top 28 wide receiver, but had 12 targets. Amari Cooper is 2 games in a row where Amari Cooper leaves the game. So this time he's in concussion protocol. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. He's got chemistry with Joe Flacco as well, from their time with the Jets. So I really do feel like Elijah Moore is a guy that, and I do have the waivers from Greg this time, so don't worry, guys. But Elijah Moore is a guy that I think you might want to look at having on your rosters. Moving on to the Jags, the wide receiver Jags, Tyler Lockett, not a great day from him. Neither Jalen Waddle, who had the same fantastic matchup as Tyreek Hill, also not a great game. And then Garrett Wilson, who apparently none of the other quarterbacks know that you could throw the football to 17 on the Jets. So not fantastic stuff there. But that is pretty much it in terms of the wide receiver Jags and the wide receiver position in general. Moving on to the tight end swags, the number one tight end on the week, Sam Laporta, and boy, oh boy, did this guy have a day. 9 targets, 9 receptions, 140 receiving yards, 1 touchdown reception, 29 PPR points, and Laporta was straight cooking, man. Absolutely cooking. New Orleans has been a good matchup for opposing tight ends. Talked about that 2 weeks ago before Atlanta ruined it for us. But Sam Laporta just, had himself a day here, and he absolutely loved to see it. Moving on to the tight end 2 on the day, Trey McBride, 9 targets, 8 receptions, 89 receiving yards, and a touchdown there, 22.9 PPR points on the day. And we also got news that Zach Ertz had requested and was granted his release. So this just means that we don't have any concern of Zach Ertz coming back and stealing any of these opportunities here from Trey McBride. So absolutely love this for Trey. Love this for Trey McBride fantasy managers. And hopefully you can get through him being on bye next week, because he is on bye next week. And obviously it'd be tough to it's tough to replace a guy like Trey McBride, who's coming in and dropping 22.9 PPR points. So best of luck to us. I say us because I am a Trey McBride fantasy manager as well. So we'll have to navigate that situation the best we can. And the tight end 3 on the week, more egg on my face. Jake Ferguson, how you doing, buddy? 8 targets, 6 receptions, 77 receiving yards, and a touchdown, 19.7 PPR points on the day. Kind of should have known how this week was going to go for me when Jake Ferguson comes out and basically just says, oh, yeah, John, you're going to take the under on my receiving yards? Hold my beer, right? So Jake Ferguson absolutely balled out, man, too. It was probably the best game I had seen him play, right? Just even how he looked on the field, even had a little tough guy moment, getting in Seahawks defenders' faces, from Quandre Diggs to Jamal Adams, who's a big jerk, by the way. And I'll leave that at that. And then go ahead and scoring the game-winning touchdown against Jamal Adams, the jerk. So Jake Ferguson, shout out to you. And again, look, when I'm wrong, I'll take it, man. I really will take it, especially because when I'm right, y'all gonna hear about it. So, but it wouldn't be fun if it didn't go both ways there. So, moving on to rounding out these tight end swags. The tight end 4 on the week, Harrison Bryant. Tight end 5, Taysom Hill. 6, Travis Kelce. 7, George Kittle. 8, Kylan Granson. 9, Brevin Jordan. 10, or tying with Brevin Jordan for 9 would be Chigozie Okonkwo. Coming in at the tight end 11 would be, do I say it? Can I say it? Greg's not here, right? So I'm going to say it. Kyle Pitts. Number 8 tight end for Atlanta finishes the number 11 tight end on the week. And then tight end 12 on the week would be Michael Pruitt, also of the Atlanta Falcons. So big day, big weeks for the tight ends. I mean, Taysom Hill doing Taysom Hill things, 51 rushing yards, 1 touchdown on the ground, 2 receptions for 15 yards. I actually do like that part of his game is picking up with the receptions there, so definitely like to see that. Harrison Bryant having himself a day. Finally, those Harrison Bryant dynasty takes come into fruition. Only took us like 3-4 years, but we're here, baby. We're here. Yeah, I think that's really it in terms of these tight end swags. And we got to get to the most fun part of the week, which is our tight end, our touchdown or not tight end of the week. And that goes to none other than Michael Pruitt. Michael Pruitt, 1 reception, 1 target, 20 receiving yards. And you guessed it, 1 touchdown. So Michael Pruitt having himself a day, scoring the only touchdown that was scored in this game. Yeah. That's sad times for Jet fans. And if you couldn't tell, I'm one of them. So, fantastic day from Michael Pruitt, but solid day from the tight ends here. Rounding out these, moving on to the tight end Jags. There's really only 2 that stuck out. David Njoku, who pretty much, I guess, I don't know what was going on here. It seemed like Harrison Bryant was the apple of Joe Flacco's eye when it came to the tight end position. But Harrison Bryant basically had a day, and that led to David Njoku not, because only Atlanta is allowed to have 2 tight ends in the top 12 there. So in terms of the other Jag, that would be, Greg can't get them all right, man. Hunter Henry, coming as the tight end Jag on the week, or one of the tight end Jags of the week. The process was there, man. No Demario Douglas, no, going to the Bailey Zappi. There's pretty much no receiving targets outside of like Devontae Parker. So Hunter Henry felt like it was a good play, and it just didn't come through. So tight ends, man, sucks to suck sometimes, I guess. Moving on to news and injuries. Not really. We don't really cover news in this segment. It's always injuries, but I'll give you some news. Apparently, Zach Wilson, the Jets asked Zach Wilson to start this week after watching Trevor Siemian and Tim Boyle, and then benched Tim Boyle for Trevor Siemian, and they were like, wow, this offense kind of stinks. And going back to Zach Wilson, who apparently said he's reluctant. Now, Robert Saleh's come out, refuted all those reports, saying if he was reluctant to play, he wouldn't be here, and that Zach Wilson went into his office and asked him for the ball. So maybe we'll see another quarterback change. I'll be honest. As a Jet fan, honest opinion here, I understand that you had to move on from Zach Wilson, but even after watching the first game of Tim Boyle, I was like, they need to go back to Zach Wilson. Because that offense, this offense, it doesn't have much of a chance of scoring, but you feel remotely worse about it. You feel astronomically worse about it when Zach Wilson is not in there, which is crazy, a crazy sentence to utter. Ridiculous that we're here. But anyway, enough Jets talk. Injuries. New Orleans quarterback Derek Carr sidelined with a multiplicity of injuries. I heard from what was reported, it's a back, it's a shoulder, it's a concussion potentially. So Saints are probably expected to be without Derek Carr for some time. In terms of, next up, Derrick Henry, a running back for Tennessee Titans. He is not in concussion protocol after being removed from the game, so he's good to go there. Pittsburgh quarterback Kenny Pickett, he left Sunday's game with a high ankle sprain, so that there is unfortunate for sure. Expected to miss like 2 to 4 weeks, which at this point could mean the season. A lot of these injuries, 2 to 4 weeks basically mean the season. You'll see guys go on IR with a low ankle sprain or a high ankle sprain or anything, because teams want to be able to. And I'm not saying this is what's going to happen with Kenny Pickett, because they're in a little bit of a different situation as they're still vying for a playoff spot here. But you'll see teams put guys on injured reserve just so they can call up younger guys or practice squad guys and give them an opportunity to play. So, but the one that hurts the most, man, Houston wide receiver Tank Dell, likely to miss the rest of the season. He is going to miss the rest of the season with a fractured fibula. For those that don't know, your fibula is in your leg. So it is not a great news there. Not great news for Tank Dell. Not great news for Tank Dell fantasy managers. How does this impact the Houston offense? I think you'll see, obviously Nico Collins get a super concentrated target share there. I think Noah Brown, Robert Woods, they'll see a boost. Dalton Schultz, who missed last week's game with a hamstring, was replaced by Brevin Jordan. I think you'll see some more targets funneled to the tight end position. So something to just watch there. Christian Watson, Green Bay wide receiver, he suffered an injury at the end of Sunday's game, dealing with a hamstring there. He had basically been dealing with this hamstring earlier in the year. Went to, was in the game. They gave him an end around, went to go make a cut, and you could just tell right away. It looked like he was going down at first, just so got the first down. I'm going to save some time, or I'm going to stay in bounds to run the clock. But it was like, no, I'm going down because my hamstring is not good, and I don't want to get further injured. So just gave himself up there. So hopefully we'll see what happens there. But that's not great news, and especially because it happened at the end of the game, literally near the end of the game. So it's almost tough to tell, how that would have impacted or how that impacts Jordan Love and the rest of the Packers offense going forward. But Dontavius Wicks is a name that you might want to pay attention to. Cleveland wide receiver Amari Cooper left Sunday's game with a concussion. Washington running back Brian Robinson left Sunday's game and did not return with a hamstring. New England running back Ramondre Stevenson left Sunday's game with an ankle and did not return. Moving on to those waivers, and starting with the quarterback position, Gardner Minshew, only 23% rostered in Yahoo leagues right now. Gets to go up against Cincinnati next week, so not a matchup that we're particularly afraid of here. And he, threw it all over the yard yesterday, so definitely love to see that. And if I'm just looking at where Cincinnati ranks defensively against the quarterback position going into this matchup against Trevor Lawrence, they are a top 12 matchup for the quarterback position over their last 3 games. So Gardner Minshew coming off a really strong game. This looks like one where he could provide some streaming value, especially for those managers that are without Sam Howell, without Kyler Murray this week. So you might want to look in that direction. Also, Joe Flacco, 5% roster going up against Jacksonville, who allowed the 5th most fantasy points to the quarterback position going into Monday Night Football. Obviously he had a strong outing this past week against the Rams. I think he can have another strong outing next week against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Moving on to running back Tajay Spears, 36% rostered in Yahoo leagues, is the top name that Greg has on his list. Now, this could be because of we thought was going to happen with Derrick Henry, him potentially being out here. So I would move him slightly down. Antonio Gibson would probably be somebody I move up, 56% rostered in Yahoo leagues. If Brian Robinson has to miss time, we talked about this all season, all year basically. If he has to miss time, Antonio Gibson basically will get the 2-down work here, along with the receiving work that he's already getting. And another name that I'll probably move up that list is Ezekiel Elliott, 40% rostered in Yahoo leagues. We obviously saw the injury to Ramondre Stevenson, and they play on Thursday Night Football, so it would be a really quick turnaround to get Ramondre Stevenson ready to go up against the Pittsburgh Steelers. But, I would imagine that Ezekiel Elliott could slot in as a potential flex, RB3 flex option for those looking for help at the running back position. Moving on to wide receiver, Jonathan Mingo, a name that Greg has been really high on, was high on coming into, this week, 7% rostered in Yahoo leagues. So he's somebody that's widely available. I would argue, though, that I would go Elijah Moore, who Greg also has on his list, 43% rostered in Yahoo leagues, 12 targets this past week against the LA Rams. Did only catch 4 of them, but 12 target number is something that you definitely want. And him and Joe Flacco, I would imagine, will get on the same page sooner rather than later. Additionally, at the wide receiver position, Jalen Hyatt, who I talked about briefly, 5% rostered, widely available. You could pick him up right now if you play in a Yahoo league. And some other leagues might allow you to do it as well based on, how it was set up. But you could go ahead, drop a player that, I don't know if you have Tank Dell, you would have started him. But if you have somebody on your bench that you want to drop, you were checking to see, hey, I'm picking up this backup running back in case the starter gets injured. That didn't happen. I would go ahead and pick up Jalen Hyatt if you so fancy. Moving on to the tight end position, Chiga Quanko, 31% rostered in Yahoo leagues. He's widely available. Tyler Conklin, 20% rostered. Tucker Kraft, I think, makes a ton of sense. I mean, I think he was a guy I was supposed to highlight in the honorable mention portion, but he's a guy that he seemed to be very involved, has pretty much taken over the Luke Musgrave role in his absence. So they have not changed the way they run their offense. They even tried to set up a tight end screen for him yesterday. So he's somebody who's involved, and I would probably prioritize relatively high if I'm going to need help at the tight end position. And then Harrison Bryant, I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done to determine if this was a one-off, but 0% rostered in Yahoo leagues, definitely widely available. And again, player that I've been high on since he entered the league, and somebody that I've always thought was talented, just didn't have a ton of opportunities. And now it looks like he's getting those. But again, we'll have to dig in and see what it looks like from a snap usage, route usage kind of deal there. So just things to note. But that is the waiver position, or that is the waiver wire portion of the show there. And hopefully you guys are able to take that information and make it actionable and go out and win some fantasy championships there. So that is all we have today, y'all. We will be back on Wednesday, 3 p.m. Eastern, live. Hopefully we're live. Hopefully we've, overcome any of these issues. But if we are unable to get right on and get live, we will definitely be tweeting that out from the show. We'll definitely be tweeting that out from the show's Twitter page or X page, whatever you want to call it. I still haven't changed the web address. It's still twitter.com. So, but on the X platform at FF Diagnostics, go ahead and make sure you follow the show. You can get all those notifications. Also, make sure you're following me at the real Jon J_FF. And you can follow Greg on Twitter as well as G Money_truth. Also, FF Diagnostics is on Instagram as well. Same tag. I'm on Instagram as well. Same tag. Greg is on Instagram at we_made_it. So pleasure being on with y'all as always. Appreciate the support. And we'll see y'all on Wednesday breaking down some Thursday Night Football as well as some more fantasy matchups. So have a good one, y'all. We're out of here. Peace.